The TalkSport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.
Welcome back to the show, all Cherries fans, all Southampton fans, and also the whole of the Premier League. It is a pleasure to welcome Southampton, our local rivals just down the road down the M27, back to the Premier League. And we've got a very, very special show for you today. Now, before we get going, do check out our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. You can visit their website and they will have on there all of the services that they do. So please go and check them out. Do remember, we are the TalkSport Fan Network AFC Bournemouth channel of choice as well. So that's also something to shout about. Now, I've got a very, very special guest with me today. Now, he was a former host of Top Gear, a former host of Fifth Gear, and also is the host of Lovecars. He also raced in Formula One. It is a pleasure to welcome onto the show Tiff Needell. Welcome to the show, Tiff. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm a bit surprised to be invited to the show. You know, I put a bit of red and white on today just to make sure you understand that, you know, we are actually, you know, opponents in this game of football on the South Coast.
Exactly. And do you know what? Welcome back to any Southampton fans watching, because we've missed you. We've actually missed you.
Well, you're in the lofty heights of mid-table in the Premiership last year, so you know we have to bow to your superiority initially.
Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, we're going to both have a good season, because do you know what? It's always nice to have a local team, because there's nobody else really in the Premier League. We're just stuck on our own. You know, when you went down last season, it was just like, where is everybody gone?
But when are you going to get a bigger ground? Because getting tickets for your matches is such a hard thing to do. You know, what's the plans? Is it there were sort of rumours years ago, weren't there? Any new rumours about a bigger ground?
There is talk that Bill Foley is going to build a new stadium just behind the current Dean Court. We've got the Camford Magna training ground that's being built at the moment, and then what they're planning to do is knock down the existing training ground, which is just behind the stadium, and build there. Of course, it's all pipe dreams at the moment. I don't know whether or not it's going through the council, but hopefully, fingers crossed, they will agree to it.
About 5 years away, though, or 3 years away, it's going to take, isn't it, realistically?
Yes, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
While I'm visiting your car parking as well, have you got any hints where I can car park easier than driving from round all the local lanes for half an hour? And also the planning permission, can you get an Indian restaurant built nearer to the stadium? Because me and the boys, we like to have a curry and a beer before match.
Oh, same here.
But you're in the middle of nowhere out there, isn't there? There's nowhere to go to.
No, completely agree. You know, there's a nice Indian that I go to, but that's over in Kingston, so that's way too far for anybody. But yeah, to be honest, I completely agree. Love an Indian before going to the match. You know, although saying that, we'd be in there every single game. So, you know, it's probably quite good on our pockets.
The viewers are like Brighton's the same as well. Unfortunately, you know, you're miles from anywhere. The old clubs, you know, when you got the city centre, we love going to Watford, you know, because you're in the city centre and lots of restaurants and pubs available, but most modern day places have been built, you know, away, and luckily in Southampton we're very near lots of restaurants and bars, so it's always a problem. Our football trips are half and half, you know. First, if we have a good meal, we're happy, and then the game we win, then we're double happy. But if the game we lose, well, at least we had half a good day because we had a good lunch and a few beers.
Yeah, exactly. St Mary's is a stadium that, you know, we dream of having, but there's something to be said about having a stadium like Dean Court, like the Dell. You know, it's something different, isn't it?
Yeah. It's all tight and you're near the pitch and all that sort of stuff. And you know, these huge modern, like West Ham's an awful place to go and watch football. You're miles to the ground. Have you done the away day at West Ham?
Yes.
It's a miserable trip.
You have to get your binoculars out to actually see the
Oh,
pitch.
no.
I'm already short-sighted.
And
So
the fact that half your fans are sort of a tier back with a huge gap between the front tier and the back tier, and the bar underneath. When it rains, I remember going to the bar at the half time, and the rain comes through the roof onto. That's a terrible place. Anyway, move on. Right, good. I look forward to coming. I might have trouble parking, and I might have trouble finding a beer in an Indian restaurant, but I still look forward to returning this season.
definitely. And I'll tell you what, we're delighted to have you back. But we'll discuss your career in a bit. But what are your earliest memories of supporting Saints?
Well, only really when we moved to near Romsey, where we live now with the boys, which was only 2006 or 7. I forget. I think our first game was 2009.
Yeah.
Because I follow football, I follow all sports, and as a kid, I hate to say I was a Man United fan, because at the school at age about 15, I remember it was Dennis Law, George Best, Bobby Charlton, Nobby Stiles. I mean, what a team. I mean, they had that famous 4-1 win in Benfica. I don't know, they won some amazing game in Benfica when I was at school. And so you couldn't help but be attracted when you were neutral to the great Man United of the mid-60s. But then since then, I just followed all teams. But yeah, we moved down to here just, as I said, about 15 or 20 years ago now. And I hadn't really been to a live football match for 20 years, wasn't that much of a visitor. But my two sons, they were about 13 and 10, I think. And one of them said, "We want to go to a football match, Dad." "Oh, what do you want to go to a football match for? Watch on the telly, don't be idiots." But I played charity golf at the Variety Club and Sparks, and I met Matt Latiz, which I was very honoured to know. And I said, "Oh, Matt, I've got to get some flipping tickets. How do I get them?" He didn't pay for them. He arranged for them. I bought them.
Yeah.
But just getting seats now at a Premiership game is hard enough, isn't it? So we went down, and the first time I walked down to the ground with my two boys with their brand new red and white scarves, one in each hand, I thought, this is what Dad should do, take them. And even though we started our Saints in true Saints style by being 2-0 up at half time, with what's the giraffe called? Big tall guy who scored a goal. What's his name? The giraffe.
Oh, Crouch.
Crouchy.
Yeah,
scored
Crouchy.
2-0 up against the dreaded Villa. And they beat us 3-2. So that was it. That was Southampton started. And that was the season we went down. So that was 2009, I think, when they got demoted. So then getting tickets was very easy, which was quite fun. So we still followed them, League Championship, League One. Had some wonderful moments of getting promoted twice and running on the pitch and the great glory days. And it just became a family thing then, because the boys, when they went to university, most parents don't see their kids. They disappear for 4 months and they never come back again. But, we had our two sons coming home every 2 weeks to go to the game. Yeah. And it just became a great family thing. One couldn't make it. My wife started watching. She would have dreamed of watching football 20 years ago. So, and we love away games. We really enjoy those with the boys. Go to London and Leicester. We go as far as Birmingham. And so yeah, we've just really enjoyed it as a family thing. And it's been fantastic.
Of course, a lot of Bournemouth fans say that this is a rivalry, but
you don't count. It's like those bastards up the road, they're Pompey boys. In fact, it's a terrible thing, because we were actually living in Petersfield 20 years ago, and two of my sons were born in the hospital right next to Pompey's ground. And if it hadn't been the fact we moved to Southampton in 2005 or 6, we would have been Pompey fans. I mean, the thought of it now.
Did you never go to Fratton Park? Never go to Fratton Park?
We went. No one. They weren't old enough then to want to go to football.
Yeah.
It was only when they became old enough by the time we moved. But we went to that cup tie 3 or 4 years ago with an escort in the bus. He's escorted by the police. So, of course, the only consolation of not getting promoted was we were looking forward to the great derby rivals with the Pompeys. But, oh dear. It's still about, it's ridiculous that our boys still sing "Shoot the Pompey Scum." I'm not with all this new chanting, especially racist chants and violent, inciting violence. I'm amazed that we haven't actually been cracked down on. Because if we start every flipping match, my mother, should I get your father's gun and shoot the Pompey Scum? It's inciting violence.
Yeah.
So it's a bit sad sometimes the way we sing that every time, I think. But anyway, hey ho, revivals. But you're just our little friendly team. You don't really count. To
Yeah,
us.
we're
You're
friends,
just,
aren't we? You know,
funny little club down the road.
How determined were you? Because of course you went through the playoff final. Portsmouth had just been promoted.
Yeah.
You know, I bet it was a case of, lads, we've got to win this playoff final because if we don't, we're playing them.
Well, as we said, the funny thing about the championship is, you see, we spent 4 or 5 years, same as you do, you know.
Yeah.
Oh God, we got 1 point. We might not get relegated. You know. Oh gosh, we're in the top 5, bottom 5. I mean, you know, if we get 1 point this weekend, it will save our lives. And it almost ruins your football, continuously being terrified of relegation.
Yeah.
And of course, it came to us last year, so we'll drop. But we had such a wonderful year in the championship. You know, we're winning, Matt. We're winning that word. We don't hear it very often when you're in the Prem. You know, so we actually love it. No DR thing. That was the best thing. No DRS. So we escaped all that rubbish, which, you know, just ruined the cup final, didn't it? With the penalty awarded to England, we didn't ruin it by the cup final. But I mean, you feel for Holland in a way.
Yeah.
And so we just enjoyed it so much. So now, I think the thing is, you've got to get back up quick. So we're going back up straight away, which is fantastic. But we'll no longer ever fear being demoted. You know, if you stay down for 3 or 4 or 5 seasons and you get stuck and you haven't got the money, then you stay in the championship for 20 years. That's the risk. But if you can bounce back quickly like we've done, so we'll no longer fear relegation, because we've really enjoyed this year.
Do you think that with regards to when teams do get relegated from the Premier League, Tiff, that, you know, that's such a big advantage because you've got the parachute payments of getting straight back up?
Yeah. Well, it happens a lot, doesn't it, nowadays? It really is a bounce back system. Yeah. So, as long as we keep bouncing back, as I said, then we stay down for 2 or 3 or 4 years, then you're in real trouble.
Yeah, most definitely. We'll come back onto Saints as well, because of course there's a couple of people that we want to talk about. 2 which are popular, 2 that, you know, are Bournemouth players at the moment as it stands. One that's less popular, but we'll come to him as well. But let's talk about your career, because you've taken part, Tiff, in the Formula 1 Championship, British F1 Championship, Le Mans, British Touring Car Championship, and the British Rallycross Grand Prix. Prior to your work on TV. First of all, how did your love of cars come about?
Oh, well, Dad was a huge fan. Dad actually used to spectate at Brooklands before the war when those great aero engine monsters were going around the banking. He was a huge fan of motorsport himself. So as soon as I was bored, as soon as I could walk, I was taken down to Goodwood to cling to the fences and watch racing. We don't have any money to race, but I watched these huge, colourful machines roaring by with the noise and the smell of these heroes wrestling the cars through the corners. And so, you know, from age 4 or whatever it was, all I ever wanted to be was a racing driver. Yeah. So, we kept watching with the Brands Hatch and Silverstone. We were just fans, you know, I was just clinging to the fence. But had no money to raise money. We lived in a rented flat in Weybridge, Surrey. Because I came from Weybridge in Surrey, everyone assumes, another millionaire boy, you know, because Weybridge is a famously rich town. But we were on the wrong side of the railway line, as it were. So I had no money at all. I left school to be a civil engineer. I went to university for 5 years. But in that first year of my sandwich degree course, I entered a magazine competition and won a Formula Ford racing car. So incredible luck and things made my career begin. Yeah. I'd been to the racing drivers' school for you. As soon as I left school, in the summer of '69, good record that. I always remember that.
Yeah, it was.
I borrowed my mum's Morris 1000 and went down to Brands Hatch with it. I emptied my post office savings from cleaning cars and mowing lawns and doing all sorts of odd jobs as a kid. And spent it all at the racing drivers' school. And because I was doing a 5-year sandwich degree course in civil engineering, I was earning money. I was at university every winter, and then earning money every summer with George Wimpy & Co Limited. So I spent everything I earned on driving this car that I'd won. So it was a haphazard career that incredibly came out good in the end.
How did the big break come about into the British F1 Championship? Because you took part in 1979, if I'm right in thinking.
Yeah, that was 79. But it was, again, you know, a civil engineer 5 days a week, a mechanic in my little garage 5 nights a week, and the weekend I was the van driver and the mechanic and the racing driver. And 5 years of doing that, I managed to work my way to the top of the National Formula 4 Championship, and was voted the most promising young British driver in 1976, and presented the award by James Hunt. So, in fact, if you look at my tiff.tv website, I've just recently added on 50 photos for 50 years. So you can scroll through them and see this history, and taking that award from James Hunt. And that got me a professional drive by the Unipart Formula 3 team. So that I became a retired civil engineer, aged about 25. Raced in Formula 3, did quite well in that. Then I got this scholarship for the British Formula 1 Championship, as you've said. Sponsored by Durex. We were just coming out of the closet and doing a bit of advertising. And, it was specifically intended, this scholarship, for up and coming young drivers. That's the best joke I have of myself after the speech. So that got me in a Formula 1 car. Then when poor Claire Rigazzoni had a terrible crash in Long Beach driving this Ensign Formula 1 car, I was brought in as the sort of substitute off the bench and made my Grand Prix debut in the Belgian Grand Prix in 1980.
And you finished on the podium, didn't you, at Zolder?
No, that was also Zolder. That was the British Formula 1. In the Durex car, I finished on the podium.
Yes.
So it was a year later. I was actually the proper Grand Prix at Belgium, driving the Ensign. But it was only a temporary drive, and I was only substituting for an injured driver, and the bugger got better. So I came off the subs bench, did 2 Grand Prix at the highest level, and I'm delighted I got that far. I got to the peak of Everest. But if you don't stay stuck, when you think there's only 20 drivers in Formula 1, it's the most ridiculously hard thing to get into. You think about the Premiership. What's the squad in the Premiership? 24 or 32? I don't even know. It's 24. Anyway,
26, I think now, 26? Isn't it? Oh yeah, 26.
So when you think you've got 20? How many? 22 teams is it, or 20? I don't know.
20 teams. Yeah, 20 teams.
20 teams with 30 professionals. So that's 600 professional players. That's in the English Premiership. You spread that around the world. You think how many footballers are at the top of the tree when there's just 20 racing drivers. So I was so proud to have got to the peak, even though it's very brief. But then I had this wonderful sports car career, because after that, you look around other things available, and I did 14 Le Mans 24-hour races in the World Sports Car Championship. So had a wonderful life, not earning the fortunes of Nigel Mansell, but having a wonderful fortune of great experiences racing all over the world.
Le Mans is always an interesting one for me, because you did finish on the podium there as well. But of course, it is an endurance race. How do you cope with that?
Just keep going. We finished third on the 1990. And I was racing in Japan, actually, in the Japanese Sports Car Championship. The Japanese owner wanted to race his car at Le Mans, so we got an entry. We brought a little private team. It was the American crew chief with about 5 Japanese mechanics over to the great Le Mans 24-hour race. And it was the peak of the Group C period, 1990. And we just worked our little socks off. I had 2 other young British drivers with me. And we were up against, and we actually finished third. We were only beaten by the factory Silk Cut Jaguars. The factory Porsche was behind us. The factory Nissan was behind that. The factory Toyota was behind that. So we were hitting well above our pace, as it were. We were like a League One team winning the FA Cup, to be honest. And we had nowadays they've got fitness coaches and dietitians and masseurs. We had none of that, and we just did single stints flat out. Nowadays, some of the pros will do triple stints, drive non-stop for 2.5 hours. We were lucky to do 1 hour before we got knackered. We just kept, so I didn't sleep at all. We were just in the car, 2 hours off, in the car for an hour, and we just kept going. And you're absolutely knackered at the end, but it's a wonderful feeling.
Do you think that, and that's actually quite a good point that correlates to football as well, because of course you've got these nutritionists and sports scientists and everything in football as well. Back, when, before I was born, and, in the days of George Best and players like that, it was commonplace to see players with cigarettes hanging out their mouths.
Well, they were all pissed. They used to drink at lunchtime. They used to drink and smoke. They were all rat-faced most of the time. It's absolutely incredible. And it is such a different era. The fitness of all sportsmen now, Grand Prix drivers are amongst the fittest athletes in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, they go through this 4G everywhere, non-stop for 2 hours. I mean, it's the exhaustion. I mean, even as recently as remember Senna and Mansell, they used to collapse in their cars in a pool of sweat, were absolutely exhausted. And nowadays they just get out and check their hair and look at the other competitors' tyres, and they don't seem tired at all. And they are incredibly fit athletes, and as you say, we're seeing it now in all sports.
Do you think, though, that over-fitness is kind of ruining the fun of sport as well?
Completely, yeah, completely. I was a James Hunt fan. I wanted to, go out and party. I didn't want all this, the fitness. And of course, now the telemetry, they spend about 5 hours poring over all the details of the telemetry, the readouts they get from the cars. Whereas, we just said the engineer will understeers a bit. Can you put a bit more front wing on? And that was it. So high tech, so much science involved with Formula One nowadays.
Of course, you did break into TV, and you've become the host of Top Gear in 1987. How did your work on TV and also your racing career, how did you compromise both of those?
Well, I thought one would help the other, but it didn't. I thought the Top Gear, all my life, it's just been sort of lucky twists and turns that have taken me where I got to, winning the most promising young driver, and then the Durex scholarship, and then the one-off Formula One drive. But it just sort of happened my way. And what was the question you were saying? How did it?
How did you manage that, really? How did you manage?
So the Top Gear thing, that became another accident. So Chris Goffey broke his ankle when he was supposed to drive a racing car. Yeah. And by then I'd already done commentary with the lovely Murray Walker, one of the nicest men in the world, Murray Walker. Yeah. And I'd been one of the very first expert analysts. Again, that was a new thing. The 80s, you didn't have many of those. And James Hunt was doing it in Formula One, but couldn't be bothered to do Formula 3s and Formula 2s. So the BBC obviously then heard me talking with Murray Walker, and so when this opportunity Top Gear, they said, well, we'll get Tiff Needell, we know his phone number, we know what he sounds like. So they stuck me in this racing car, and this is what actually I've shot myself in the foot, because I thought when you watched racing, it always looks a bit easy, doesn't it? Just turn left, turn right, I could do that, looks easy peasy. So I deliberately started kicking this car sideways, so it looked like I was about to crash, even though I was actually doing it for fun. So when the BBC producers saw I could do this amazing, driving on the edge of disaster and talk at the same time, they got me back to do more and more. So now I thought I'm on the BBC telly. The other teams, they want me now to drive touring cars. I'll be in the top of everyone's list. I think most of the team managers saw me doing this sideways driving. So blooming hell, I'm not employing him because that's not the quick way to drive a racing car. The quick way is super smooth and neat and tidy. So. But it was funny. So then I just did more and more Top Gear and became a TV tart. I was still racing. I was still in the World Sports Car Championship and GT racing. So I was combining the two and was sort of professional driver right through to early 2000s.
It's the fun way to drive a car, though, isn't it?
Well, I do this. A quick advert here. I do these passenger rides at Thruxton, just up the road. For 8 years or 10 years now, I do these 3 laps, sit you beside me, turn the camera on, you can scream, laugh, cry. We've got a BMW M2. It's about 3 days a month. If you want to come to Stratford, buy your friends a Christmas present for a passenger ride with Tiff. I've done it 8,000 people now. Everyone smiles, laughs, cries, and can't quite believe what a road car can do around a racetrack. So it is fun. But that's all sideways tyre smoking. So,
I'm signing up to that, Tiff. I'm signing up to that. And I know that I'm going to be on the edge of my seat. I've got to be honest, I'm a fast driver, but, going sideways and, darting around corners, that will be some adventure, to be honest.
Come on, I might give you a free ride if you're nice. As long as you publish at thruxtonracing.co.uk, you can come for free.
Definitely.
That's
Link is below in the description as well, guys. So please go and sign yourself up. But of course, on Top Gear, you worked with a number of well-known faces. You know who I'm going to mention here. One of those faces you always seem to have good chemistry with, Tiff. Is a certain fresh face, Jeremy Clarkson. He's well known for his wittiness, his brutal honesty, and his knowledge. And as James May once said, being a bit of a knob. What was he like to work with?
We had a lot of fun. And the funny thing is, in those days, because we were all filming our own items, so I'd go off, the program was 6 different items.
Yeah.
So we never actually worked together that often. We did some of these amazing motor show things and some group tests, and of course me driving him and Quentin Wilson in a Ford Focus will be remembered for everyone. But Quentin was praying in the back. So we used to meet in Birmingham on quite a few occasions, and it all ended up in alcohol and late nights, and a lot of fun. I mean, Jeremy's one of the cleverest journalists. I mean, I read his Sunday Times columns. If I buy the Sunday Times just to read his column, not his motoring columns, He's just got such a straightforward opinion on everything that happens around the world. He writes his comics. I was when Top Gear magazine was launched in the mid '90s, and at that time we had about 6 million watching Top Gear, the same as it got, in the new Top Gear, as it were, whatever it was. And it was, he'd write these columns in 10 minutes. He'd write a column about a box of matches, and he'd write it. It was funny, And I was I had to do a column as well once a month, and I would spend about 2 weeks. Oh God, I got Quentin and Jeremy's columns, then mine. I'm a civil engineer, my use of English and clever similes and those sorts of things, whatever the hell they are, that were beyond me. And I'd spend about 2 weeks. Oh gosh, I'd write a sentence and have a cup of coffee and come back and rewrite the sentence. So now he writes his columns in the Sunday Times, The Sun, and you think he's doing his farming and he's doing car shows and he's doing other stuff, and he's amazing talent. And he upsets a few people, obviously, but people that talk their mind usually upset someone somewhere. That's the way the world goes. But it wasn't. And the trouble is, of course, he left Top Gear to do his chat show, and Quentin Wilson left to go and make $1 million importing cars from Europe when there were cheap deals going on. So the viewing figures dropped off, and then we had a new controller of BBC Two, Jane, I've forgotten her name now, Jane someone. I want to forget her name. Yeah. She started dumbing down Top Gear. She said, I'm going to get a wider audience. Don't worry, I'll make it grow again. But then she made me sort of untap my shirt and put a gel in my hair and that sort of rubbish. And I said, do we have to have all these numbers, all these naught to whatever it is and speeds? And so then, of course, we insulted the core audience and the figures dropped more. And then we were taken off air. So in 2001 or whatever it was, Top Gear was shut down. And I don't think she actually wanted a car show on her vision of BBC Two, which is fair enough. That's her prerogative. That's her right. So it was actually off air. And I then went to the whole Top Gear team in Birmingham and sort of said, well, I've got an idea. Let's, offer the programme to other channels. And the whole Top Gear team in those days was about 2 researchers and 3 directors. It was tiny. Yeah. And when you look at the thing that is now, that they have about, I think, about sort of 64 people go out to shoot. So yeah, anyway, so I then went to Channel 5 and they loved the idea and just said, yeah, okay, we'll employ you all. And we created Fifth Gear. We got Quentin Wilson back. Yeah. And so Fifth Gear was launched about 6 months after the last Top Gear went out. So for about a year, we were just on our own, Fifth Gear. And then I think people went, Jane Root, I think people at the BBC went to Miss Root's office and said, well, what's this Fifth Gear? What's Top Gear? Where's Top Gear? And so she was almost forced to have a new Top Gear. And that's when Jeremy very cleverly went back to the BBC and said, well, we've got some new ideas about a new version of Top Gear. And so the new Top Gear was born. And of course, it was great to get Jeremy back doing cars, and the show took off.
When, and this is something, of course, that Jeremy Clarkson has suffered, because when he went to start the Grand Tour, the BBC put in so many caveats to stop him doing certain things. Was it the same with Fifth Gear, even though they decided to shut down Top Gear? Was it same?
We just copied the format. We were just Top Gear, kept going. We didn't think there was anything wrong with them. It was a proper magazine format, and obviously Jeremy. And the thing about, we were criticised by, well, can we not make it more exciting? And we said, well, if you get us a bit more money, we can have a helicopter once a year for one spectacular piece. No, there's no more money for Top Gear, no more money. So we had no budget to do anything spectacular. And that was the thing when Jane Root said, well, can you come back and make this new Top Gear? Jeremy said, well, I never want to go to Birmingham again. I want an airfield in Surrey. I want a helicopter every day. I want, this and that, and tour around the world. The budget was going up. I mean, seriously, but I think we were sort of £100,000 an hour. I think the most we ever had on fifth gear. And it got up to £1 million a show, Top Gear. And it was lovely because the producer was kept on hauled into the office of the BBC accountants to say, you've overspent your money. You've overspent your money. And he said, well, what are you going to do about it? It was a vastly popular show. There was then, I mean, they made money out of it because they sold it around the world, because it's such a global attraction.
Yeah.
So we cruised along on fifth gear, and they went upwards on Top Gear.
Well, you have driven two cars that I've always dreamt of. Those two cars are the Bugatti Veyron and the Pagani Zonda R.
Yes.
Two very, very sexy motors, two very, very fast motors. Firstly, what is your favourite? And if it's not one of those, what is your favourite overall car?
It's definitely not one of those. It's 100% the McLaren F1. One of my most famous Top Gear items. I was 93 or something. It's still on YouTube. It still gets hit. Because the trouble is that the Bugatti Veyron in particular is just a computerized machine. So the problem is now that you got 1,500 horsepower. There was a 2,000 horsepower Lotus that was crashed at Goodwood yesterday. It's driven by computers, and you open the throttle, you don't drive it. You operate these modern hypercars because they've got too much horsepower. I mean, the McLaren F1 had 620 horsepower or something, and no traction control, no computers helping you. You had to drive it. And with 620 horsepower, that was an animal, only an experienced driver can really take it to the limit. And so that is the sort of maximum horsepower a car can take. So these ridiculous 1,500 horsepower Bugatti Veyrons, you open the throttle, the computer says, whoa, it's a bit greasy. You can have 300 horsepower now, or it's dry. You can have 500 horsepower. You never actually have 1,500 horsepower because the wheels couldn't take it. This Lotus, he did a big burnout on the start line at Goodwood yesterday. And then looks like, so I think it's got 4 electric motors, one for each wheel or something. And the computer probably got confused and just turned him sharp right into the straw bales 100 yards off the start line. So this is the problem with all the hypercars. I've actually got bored with them, to be honest, because I think they're 3 million, 4 million pounds. They get bought by someone in the Middle East. They get put in a museum. They never get driven by anybody. They're sort of investments for people now, these sorts of cars. So it's got, and the Zonda R, which I'm with you, that was probably about the most extreme car that you could drive yourself. It wasn't flooded with computers. And I love the look of the Zonda. It had a V12 engine. And so, the Zonda R is probably the end of the road of what I would actually call, real cars, not these futuristic things. They just add more and more horsepower. It's just a gimmick, which you don't need. You only need 600. That's all you want. That's enough.
Thinking about F1 as well, and what you've just said there, of course, there is all these restrictions and things coming into F1. Of course, the technology is coming to it. We've already spoken about the drivers and what they have to go through. But do you think that F1 is losing its appeal and it's becoming a bit more predictable, a little bit like the Premier League, because of that?
Oh, it is, because, I mean, the audience figures this year have been dropping. Because Max Verstappen was winning all races. Luckily at the moment now, suddenly McLaren and Mercedes have caught up, and Ferrari. So we're getting better racing. But the other trouble is there's no noise. Well, there is a noise. There's a sound. It's a very muted sound. The cars are visually heavy, lardy-tardy. They're not twitching around. There's no visual excitement. If I just retweeted someone just now, sent out the video of Jean Alesi at the British Grand Prix. And it's just the sound of the guy driving the car. You've got to see the car being driven. And these things aren't. They're just ploughing around, and you can't overtake the long, heavy machines. But it's all about the money. Sadly, Liberty have taken over. The 10 teams want all the money for themselves. They won't allow Andretti. They're resisting an 11th team. We need more cars. We need more drivers. We need more variety. but they want the manufacturers to pay the bills, therefore they have to appease them with these hybrids and the 2026 regulations of 50% electric, 50% petrol, but not petrol, sorry, fuel, manufactured fuel. It's just going all the wrong way for real enthusiasts, because they're just, it's just become a big show. It was IndyCar, if you watch that, Sky Sports F1, if you watch Grand Prix, well, normally on an evening, on a Sunday evening, there's an IndyCar race, and there you can see the drivers driving. There's opposite lot going on, and that's what the enthusiast wants. But I think limited, they don't care about the enthusiast. You know, we're a little minority, a bit like, you know, Top Gear, when I said they wanted to dumb it down to widen the audience, but they insulted the core viewers. And I think they're now insulting the core enthusiast by taking more and more Middle East races, more and more American races, you know, especially the Middle East. They're very small spectator numbers, and the true race fan. And so they're going more and more Monte Carlo, of course, Las Vegas. They want a party. It's more about, when you read about the Silverstone next year, the first adverts they got, you know, the Beatles, think of big band, they got Taylor Swift or something. They talk more about the concerts and the parties going on around the event than they actually do about the racing cars. And it's almost like the racing is the bit in the middle, but the actual thing is all about partying. And the Paddock Club, this most expensive tickets for the Grand Prix, they used to be about £3,000 for 3 days. And the British Grand Prix, they're up to £7,500. So you take a family of four, that's £30,000. £30,000.
Crazy, isn't it?
And the Vegas ones, they're about 15,000 a pop. So it's like £60,000 to go to Las Vegas and that's what they're all aiming it at. They're aiming it at rich people that don't really give a toss about what's going on the track. It's just something. God, we were at the American Grand Prix, you know. Yeah, we didn't watch any racing. We were sitting in the lounge watching on the television, spending £60,000. So the true enthusiasts, we're crying a bit that the way the sport's been taken away to become a money making feeder thing, which is why more and more people watch IndyCar and that sort of thing, NASCAR even.
I completely agree with you on that. At the end of the day, it should be the driver that makes the difference, not the car, not the technology, not all these extra little bits and pieces. And I've been to Yas Marinas. I went to Yas Marinas last year, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. You know, it's an interesting track. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for the race, but I went there to visit and had a little look around. But I completely agree with what you're saying there, that it is all becoming about the show, the money. You know, they had a band, I can't remember who it was, that was going to be taking place and was going around. It's got Ferrari World just behind it. You know, don't get me wrong, amazing course, you know, amazing race.
It's one of the better tracks there, but the new Saudi one was terrible, that one. But it's all about the show, it's all about the money, and it's a bit of a shame.
It is, it is. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get F1 back to where it was. But we can't.
It's a lost cause. It's a lost cause. I'm campaigning to keep the regulations we've got, because they're only going to get worse. Because now they've all caught up with the Red Bull. It's taken about 5 years to catch up, but we've actually got some really good, you know, racing ahead of us, albeit, you know, hard to overtake and DRS and all that stuff. But I think 2026. You know, it's going to spread the field out again. You know, whoever does employ Adrian Newey will probably find themselves winning all the Grand Prix again, because the aero of this new system, active aero of changing every lap, is going to be very complex.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken about cars that you like, and we've spoken about good cars. What's the worst car you've ever driven, Tiff?
Well, the trouble is there aren't many nowadays, because they're all quite good. But the things like the FSO Polonaise, some of those Eastern Bloc things that crept into Britain, they were pretty horrendous. But so, in general, you know, most cars are, you know, they're pretty well sorted nowadays. It's hard to pick on one like that, because it's one of the problems of doing car tests. You know, it's very hard. The trouble is you start picking on little things. You know, I don't like the steering wheel shape. Then you get criticised. Well, why are you just worrying about steering wheels? The whole car, you know. So sometimes the manufacturers, you contemplate, you like 95% of the car, and just because you have a 5%, all they can complain about. It's the little thing you picked up. But then trouble is, little things matter when the cars are all very equal and very same nowadays. They all do the same job very efficiently. It is the little things that count, you know.
Definitely. You haven't driven the PLP50, have you?
No, not yet. No, so I'm waiting. What was the PLP50? That's not the.
It was that three-wheeled car, wasn't it? That I think it was Clarkson. Clarkson drove it. Yes.
What was the mate name? Wasn't it Peel? What was the actual mate's
Peel,
name?
I think.
Peel. Yes, I thought it said PL.
Peel.
Yes,
Peel, yeah. And he went round a corner. Where did he drive it? I think he took it home to Barnsley or somewhere like that. It all merges into
the Reliant Robins that used to fall over as well. They were good fun. 3 wheels. If 3 wheels don't work. 3 wheels sadly don't work. As sadly, poor old Freddie Flintoff discovered to his own detriment and finished Top Gear off. 3-wheel car. It rolled over.
Do you think it will come back in some guise?
I don't think so. I think they're all worn out with it all. I mean, the trouble is, it becomes harder and harder to make a format. I mean, even the Clarkson Hammond and May was getting tired. They were making up things going wrong, and it was sort of formulaic. You know, yes, okay. So now May will break down, and then the police cars will come along, and it's sort of the early ones when it all sort of happened naturally. They just create ridiculous transformed cars that would fall over or sink in lakes, and it was very funny, but it was getting a bit tired. And then, of course, when they came up with the sort of the next people, I forget all their names now. You know, apart from Chris Harris, who was a great driver, was always holding it together.
Yes,
but it just became this show business thing, you know, and getting Freddie and others to pretend to race. It was always an incitement of trouble, you know. Obviously, in the old days, the racing drivers, May and Jason Plato and Vicky, we knew how to drive cars fast on the limits. But then you try and make show business personalities do that, and it's almost a recipe for disaster, which of course happened with Freddie.
The thing was I always found that when Top Gear was with yourself in the 90s, it was about the cars, it was about the motoring, it was about the driving. Fifth Gear, again, about the motoring, the cars, the engines. The thing is, with Top Gear, as we got closer to the end of Jerry Clarkson's reign there, it did, like you say, become more about the challenges. You know, what are we going to do? The Patagonia Special, I think, was the last one where they had to run for their lives from Ushuaia because one of the car registration numbers had something about, well, it looked as if it had something about the Falklands in it, didn't it?
Oh, that one. Patagonia, that one all went wrong. Yeah,
yes.
Because they denied all. No, there was just an accident. It was an accident, those number plates. But I don't think it was. But I don't know.
But the thing is, because they had so much success, to actually create something now is going to be incredibly difficult to get it back up to that level.
Prime are going to recreate the Grand Tour. They bought the rights of Clarkson, Hammond and May, and they're going to bring that back. So they've got to suddenly, I mean, come up. The trouble is, they want celebrities now to be on the shows, but then you've got to make celebrities, you know, go through the hardship and the driving and travelling across a desert or somewhere, which is hard to get celebrities to want to do. I mean, some of those trips they did, you know, driving trucks through jungles for a week, you know, they really put themselves out to make those epic travelling events. So I don't know how that's all going to work, and which is why the car show. But of course, talking about Amazon Prime, of course, I'm now on Lovecars YouTube.
Yes.
Fifth Gear died as well. That ran out. It just runs out of money. Nobody wants to pay money. Car shows are expensive things to make. And whereas why you've got these reality shows now, it's so simple. You just turn the camera on, film what's happening, and it's as cheap as chips to get all sorts of weird people in front of cameras. But to make a car show is an expensive thing to do. Fifth Gear ran out of money. I think it's returning again before it runs out of money again. I've gone to YouTube just because it was a bit of fun thing to do. It's Paul Woodman's channel, Lovecars, and so I've done some of those. But he's run out of money to make more of those. But we did make 2 TV series called On the Road, and they've now out on Amazon Prime. So check Prime, On the Road, which is still cars and having fun. Yeah. Whether we get a 3rd series commissioned, we're waiting to find out. But at the moment, I'm resting or doing fractions or playing golf. Or go to Silverstone. A wonderful art. I work a lot of motor racing events, you know, hosting the corporate seats. And I had a wonderful on the Friday at Silverstone. I hosted Ollie Behrman's dad's company's guests, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Ollie Behrman, who I'd never met before. And he's the most charming young man, and now a full-time Grand Prix driver next year. So I think we've got many more years of having a British star in Formula One.
Yeah, most definitely, and fingers crossed for him as well. But let's get back onto the football, because of course Southampton back in the Premier League after that 1 year absence. But before we do that, let's just have a quick look at that relegation season. You started the season under Ralph Hasenhüttl.
Yeah.
Then you brought in Nathan Jones from Luton.
Oh,
he didn't do very well.
Sorry. I didn't hear that. That name, no. Oh,
He was a Southampton fan, though. He's a Southampton fan.
He's a nutter.
Finished off with Ruben Sellers.
We actually liked Rubens. It was so funny. We beat Chelsea or something with the first game with Rubens.
Yeah.
We had this wonderful, we've got Sellers. Rubens says he's going to keep us up, win the FA Cup. We've got Rubens Sellers. We loved him so much. And then he won, then he won nothing. And then he lost all the games to the He's a lovely man. But he just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't work. And so we quite like dear old Rubens. I'm glad he's doing well at Reading. I mean, Reading are on their knees financially. They're having such a terrible time. But Rubens managed to keep them. But he kept them up in the end, or they go down.
He did. He kept them up.
He kept them up, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of our youngsters are going there. Amoa Ameo is going there. A couple are going out on loan to Rubens, who, of course, they worked with Rubens when he was at Southampton. So a couple of our youngsters are going there. And so I hope they keep going well. And then of course, we've got Russell, but that was a bit worrying for a while. With this style of play, which we were looking as they kicked it around in our half for 20 minutes, and all thinking, "Oh, this is weird football." And then gradually it seemed to grow. We had this amazing run of not getting beaten for 24 games, which was completely out of the blue, really. And so we all love him now, but we're still a bit wary about the style of play. But towards the end of the game, when Baz was injured, the goalkeeper, who was very much active in, playing as being an extra player in the back of our half. We've gone for a more direct route when McCarthy came in, and that seemed to actually make it more exciting football. We didn't back about quite so much with kicking it around. I was terrified when they start passing around our penalty area in front of their strikers. I mean, it's a nerve-wracking style of play.
But that season, Ralph Hasenhüttl, had kept you up.
We love Ralph. Everyone still loves Ralph.
Yeah,
he didn't get any money. The annoying thing was, they dropped him in the end because things weren't going, and they got that mad Welshman and gave him money to buy players, which he didn't do very well with. So Ralph was never given any money to buy any more players. So we struggled on. But he gave his heart and soul to the club. I mean, there was no one ever doubted his passion for Southampton. And some of the early photos, I don't know how many years he was there for. He's gone from quite a young-looking middle-aged man to a very old, grey-haired man, I think. So I'm always a fan of Ralph. I was sad to see him go.
So you put the blame right at Nathan Jones's door.
Well, we weren't doing that well, but when he came on, it was just
got worse.
His interviews are all about me, not about the club. I'm the greatest manager statistically ever, or something. We just couldn't believe it. I never forget, they actually released, which is probably his downfall, a training ground video, with him shouting at players. And it's all about the personality, enjoying yourself. And it's just, what? The thing is about managers that I'm always amazed at, that they'll be at a press conference and just say, well, the lads didn't turn up today. You've lost the game. And I always thought the number one job for a manager is to motivate your team. Yes. So you can't sit there and say they didn't turn up. We had a bad day. Well, they didn't turn up because you didn't motivate them. There was a certain manager of a certain international team at the moment. I think he's doing quite well out in Germany at the moment. He's got a game this Sunday night. But I was out in Germany. I watched one of his first knockout games. And the team just didn't turn up in England. It was unbelievable, really. I mean, they don't deserve to be where they are. And, I thought, he talks about the great team spirit, and a lot of the players seem to have this. We've got this team spirit, and yet he was saved by one fluky overhead kick or brilliant overhead kick.
Yeah.
And then one great shot by Saku. So two moments of individual brilliance got us through. Then a dodgy penalty helps in the quarter-final. I mean, it's just... And yet the FA are talking about re-employing him. They're so keen to get the manager back to sign up for more.
I know, it's a bit crazy. I even said after the group games, I said they got to get rid of him. Got to get rid of him after the group games to give ourselves a chance. But somehow, the other night wasn't too bad against the Netherlands. Of course, against Spain.
There was a brilliant play in the first half.
Yeah.
The Southampton, Holland sorted it out after and changed the setup. No, but the miserable face he sits there in the stands. I was watching him live, looking at him. He doesn't get out and wave his arms around in the managers. But look at Pep. I love Pep Guardiola. I'm a huge Pep fan. You've got to be out there motivating your players. If it's dull football, you've got to put an electric shock up their bums. So it's bizarre that we're in the final. It really is bizarre. We'll probably win the thing as well. It's just incredible.
Well, play like in the first half, I think it's possible.
Well, I know. Well, that's the thing. We've got the players because he often says about, "I've taken you to 2 semi-finals and 1 final."
Yeah,
that's the great English record. Well, the players he's had, the talent England have, it should have been. I've been to 3 finals and won 2 of them. With the talent we've got, so motivating that talent. It's a funny thing watching England though, because I hate to say this, I'm so patriotic more than anyone in the world. The problem when you're out as a fan watching the England team, you're watching players that you hate. Every game you're playing against them. Harry Kane, I hate Harry Kane. So you despise all the players playing because they play against your club. And it's a weird thing because all of a sudden I've got to be excited and love Harry Kane and love the rest of the team. It's a funny thing, isn't it, England? And we I don't know how we quickly went off there. We went suddenly from...
Do you know what? It's good.
The Dutch team had Koeman, one of my lovely managers, and Virgil van Dijk. So I was actually watching a team with 2 people I do like against a team, well, I'm very English and very British, that I didn't like any of the players. It's a very twisted thing, this. Who have they got in Spain that's next Saints player? Have we got any of that one or not? Dusan Tadic, he was in the final, wasn't he?
Yes.
When did they do real? So many Saints. The thing about Saints is we've had so many brilliant talents I've seen growing up, and then gone on. I think there's still a pretty good team of 11 that are still professionally playing football around Europe that we could make a pretty good Saints team. But Dusan was one of our favourites.
Yes.
Luke Shaw,
yes.
Left back. I remember singing Luke. Who else? We had all sorts of great players out there. And,
of course, the last man to score in a final as well for us.
Who was that?
Luke Shaw, most recent man to score in a final. Yes, of course. 3 years ago.
Yeah. That's always a shame. But then we understand that's our position in the football world. We'll find these young talents and then they'll get taken away from us. It's Adam Lallana. Lallana's back.
Yes.
I'm not sure how good he is anymore. Did he score many for Brighton last year? I don't know.
I don't think he was that great, but I think, he's a good person to have around the place. Sometimes those sort of people are good to have in the back room, in the changing room, talking and guiding the young players through.
Well, of course, who did we have last year? I forgot his name. No, who's our famous... He's retired now.
Trying to think now.
He started with us as a youngster, and then he went away, and then he came back, and I forget names. I'm telling you names.
Oh, Theo Walcott.
Theo. We all
Theo
welcomed him
Walcott.
back. And he had lots of moments. He came on, put a bit of speed in, brought a bit of experience. But we so need a striker. Our trouble is our strikers, Che and Adam. It's a simple opinion of mine because I'm a simple football fan, but they're both too small. And it's sort of, they worked so hard, both of them, but they were both sort of 30 goal scorers in the Championship, and then they were both pretty average when we were in the Prem, and now they're both sort of 20 goal scorers in the Champ. But I think, the modern Premiership, we need someone big, strong, up front in the box. It's something we haven't had for about 4 years. I think, Ralph wanted a big striker. And so we keep on buying more centre backs and more full backs. So we need a keeper as well. We need a more experienced keeper. I think we need a Prem keeper. I mean, Baz was great. He was leaping around like a leprechaun. If leprechauns leap, the Irish keeper. So we all love Baz, but he's now done his tendon. And Macca's sort of good, solid, bench warmer. So he badly needs a striker, a Prem striker. When I look at those Crystal Palace boys now, there's 3 really strong up front there charging forwards. But so Adam probably will be there again. But I just think we need some strong strikers and a good keeper. But what are they going to spend? We don't know. How much money they want to spend ever. It's always the same, isn't it? But I think we need to spend a bit.
I think it was a cheeky bid that went on for Max Aarons, but we knocked it back. But you did have.
What's that? We had 2. Yeah, we had your
Joe Rothwell and David Brooks.
Rothwell. Two incredible strikes and then a load of mistakes in between. We won't miss Joe, I'm afraid, Rothwell. I mean, he had those amazing strikes, but he seemed to make too many errors. But Brooks, we're all impressed with him. Where's he now then? Is he coming back to you?
He's come back to ourselves. Unfortunately, in our season where we was promoted into the Premiership, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things for me with David Brooks is that Andoni Iraola has come in and he likes to play this high press football, a bit like Southgate did for the first half, a bit like Spain have throughout the tournament. But of course, that does take up a lot of energy. It's high intensity. It's high work rate. And it's no disrespect to David Brooks that at this moment in time, because he's building his body up.
Yeah. No, he was a bit fragile. You get knocked off the ball. That's the trouble with Adam Armstrong stuff. They can run fast, but a big, Premiership defenders are going to just knock you, barge you off. That's why. Well, we got Ross Stewart, haven't we? I forgot his name for a minute. Our Drogba. What do we call him? The Scottish Drogba.
Yes.
What's the name? Oh, the Loch Ness Drogba. Because he's tall. Because he didn't play all year. He came on, having been injured for 6 months, played about 5 minutes, got injured again. Then we didn't see him until the last game of the year. But whether he's a striker, really, because he's a tall, fast striker. Yeah. But he never really had a chance last year to show his skills. But no, last year was great, and we enjoyed it. We went to but it was a nightmare of a final up in Wembley because, of course, we scored at about the 20th minute, and then had 70 minutes of nervous tension, hoping we might get another goal or not concede. So sometimes you can't enjoy we need to be 3 up at Southampton before the fans begin to relax. Even 2 up's not good enough at Southampton because that it's going to be disasters ahead.
Well, you do have a man in your ranks that Cherries fans don't particularly like very much. Well, you probably know the story about Ryan Fraser, or Wee Man, as
we love
Snake.
Wee Man. Wee Man was a super.
Oh, we don't. At the end of the day, in the COVID year, of course, everybody needed sign extensions. He didn't want to sign it because he thought he was off to Arsenal. He didn't end up at Arsenal. He ended up at Newcastle, and Eddie went there anyway. But what's your opinion of Ryan?
He's been brilliant for us. I mean, he's just come. He's a real super sub, for come on when in trouble and speed and just gave it 100% with us. He seemed to be motivated enough. I think that's again motivation, managers' motivation, or. If you're being the trouble with these kids, they're so ruled as well by their managers and their bloody management team, And I think, even like, Adam Lallana was the first one to go, he wanted to be a Southampton player for life. He was telling all the Saints fans, but then his management team, well, you can earn double money here. We can get you, 10 million a year instead of 5 million or 4 million or whatever. And they get pulled and twisted by their bloody managers and by money. Dragging them away from clubs where they'd like to stay, really, because they're established and they're living down near Southampton or whatever. And of course, we lost, James Ward-Prowse, who's had an average-ish sort of year at West Ham. We didn't get him into the England team. I think he was told by his management, you've got to be in a Premiership team to get into the England team, and that sort of. And there's more money at West Ham, and so now we're probably losing Kyle Walker-Peters to West Ham. In order to get Flynn Downs, but we don't mind. That's a reasonable because Flynn Downs, he was a super. He was probably the best thing we had was Flynn Downs that we got from West Ham on loan. So the rumour is we have to drop KWP to get Flynn. But Carl's another one that's probably should have left us earlier. I mean, he just gives 100% every game. Absolutely, he's been wonderful for us. So, but there's not many players that are constantly wonderful when down at our level.
Do you think you can stay up as it stands at the moment?
What a ridiculous question. Sorry, where's my time? I think your time's up. Do you think? The worst thing, right, that ever is used all the time in sports interviews, BBC, can you stay up? Of course you can if you play. What the question I'd like to, when you get experts, like all the boys in the television, you shouldn't ask them, do you think Southampton can stay up? Do you think they will stay up?
Yes.
Now that's what I want an expert analyst to tell me. Obviously, anybody can. Anyone can win a Grand Prix, but all the other cars crash. Do you think they will? Well, no, they won't. But so obviously they can. But I actually think they will. I actually think that, there's a good bond down with Russell. He's got to take this style into the Premiership. I don't know, but I've got this funny feeling that we will.
I think you've got a good chance. The reason being is I think Russell Martin has done a good job there. I think he's cleared out the players that he doesn't want. There is that bond together, which I think was probably lacking in the season.
He won't play youngsters. That's what annoyed a lot of fans. When you see that 16-year-old Spanish kid score that goal and stuff, and quite other than who's that Manchester United kid in the England team? How old's he?
He 19? Is. Must be Kobe Mainoo. Must be about 19. Yeah.
But we've had quite a few youngsters come on in cup ties and stuff, and then they never get a chance in the top team. And it's I think we could have experimented a bit more with our own homegrown youth. Yeah, Amo and Mayo is one of them. Dimbling's another kid that was good and showed promise when he came on at the cup time and stuff. So we was looking. We tend to buy old hands or borrow old hands, thinking experience is what we need, instead of giving some of these kids a bit of a chance. So we will wait and see who we buy. Well, fingers crossed for you, because like I say, we missed you last year. We missed you. We're going to stay up because we'll be ahead of you. Therefore, that's one place that's preventing us from going down. Are we the number one team to beat next season? We said that there's not much of a rivalry, Tiff. Are we your number one target? No, we look higher than you lot. I'm thinking Man City, really. Man City's number one target, probably. Chelsea, we actually have a lot of good games at Chelsea. And that's the wonderful away trip. Have you been to the away trip, Chelsea? Yes. And I always get on the balcony, get early on the tickets, get as far down the front, and you're virtually standing on top of the corner flag. And we've had some wonderful days. Of course, Clarkson's a Chelsea fan, so we always meet up and have a hamburger and a beer before the games. So there's always been an extra rivalry. So really, Chelsea are the number one team for us to beat. There you are. That's just because you want to get one over on Clarkson, isn't it? Well, yeah. And I want to get one over on you as well. So you're on number two. Fair enough. But at least Clarkson's still ahead of me and, the people that you want to get one over on. But he always will be, won't he? But Tiff, honestly, thank you so much for coming on. You've been an absolute pleasure. All the very, very best with Lovecars. The link is below for Lovecars on Amazon Prime. Go and get yourself signed up to Amazon Prime. If you're not already subscribed, I'm pretty sure everybody is. And also, the very, very best of luck to Southampton next year. Like I say, you. Hope we both stay. The main thing is we both stay up. That's what we want. Exactly. Enjoyable season, and we both stay up. Maybe we ought to agree having 2 draws. Give us 2 points each. Yeah, definitely. No. No, we want 6 points from you guys. But Tiff, pleasure as always. And we'll catch up. Don't forget, you're invited to Thruxton. Check out thruxtonracing.co. Look at the dates and just let me know when you want to come. Most definitely. Right. And I'll tell you what, if I can, I'd love to record it as well. So everybody can. Yes. Yeah, everybody can see my face. You get the record. That's part of the deal. You get. Is it? You get a 360-degree camera. You get recording, screaming, shouting, the whole 9 yards.
That's going up on here as well. Tiff, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. And see you soon. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here at Up the Cherries in all departments. Do go and check out our recent show with Tom Meehan, former frontman of Kasabian. He was talking about his career and his love for Leicester City. We've also had Richie Neville from Five on here, Richard Archer from Hard-Fi, Adam Devlin from the Blue Tones, Damon Minchella from Ocean Colour Scene, Gaz Whelan from the Happy Mondays, Peter Hooton from The Farm, of course, BBC presenter Nick Owen, and lots more special guests. Of course, Harry as well. How can we forget Harry Redknapp? The man is legend. Of course, some Southampton fans might not agree with me on that one, but hey, he's a legend down this part of the South Coast. But until the next video, Up the Cherries, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
The TalkSport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.